Hi guys, I'm here with Terence Tan.
Hi, hello, hi everyone.
Terence, can you tell me like a little bit about yourself? You used to be a theater producer.
Yeah, that's right. I used to do a bit of acting in theater, and then I started producing some shows, comedy shows, puppet shows, and currently, I'm also helping out with an international NGO. We're promoting puppetry, puppet arts,
Wow.
children theater.
This is very interesting because I didn't even know you had this background
Yeah,
in puppet shows and puppetry, which is
yeah.
like a whole different area that I'm not very familiar with. Can you like describe the work um behind that?
Well, so I started producing shows back in the 2000s. And then we came across this show, which would be really interesting if we could use puppets to bring in enormous characters and entertain the kids and tell stories about moving on and all that stuff about this changing city, this city that kept moving so much. Um, and then somebody saw it and they were like, "Hey, could you make shows for us in Southeast Asia?" So I went around ASEAN, Japan, Korea, and we started putting shows together. And then now I'm working with an NGO, which is affiliated with UNESCO, and we're doing works for refugees or disaster relief and intercultural work and all that stuff.
So, working with NGO, the stories behind the puppetry stories. So, what kind of stories are you telling through the puppetry?
Oh, it's fascinating. It could be folk stories. It could be just history plays. Um, a completely imaginative, futurist work. Because objects and puppets, they really just go anywhere in your imagination.
Is it more so than like a physical actor?
Yeah, it definitely allows that because all you need to do is help everyone to shape and frame the space so that you recognize where you are, invent a whole new world, and everyone's very accepting.
So it can more or less go more fantastical as well.
Yeah,
Because you can
exactly.
add so many different elements to
Exactly.
puppetry.
Exactly. And you don't have to have this $1 million blockbuster budget or anything like that. You just need to ask everyone, "Hey, everyone, just imagine this toilet roll is a spaceship."
It really makes it very imaginative. Now, behind it, basically with puppetry, it's like you have the voice,
Yeah.
the actors who are playing the voice,
Yes.
and the puppetry. So there's actually several elements going on. So with the puppetry that you do, is it where you put your hands over, or is it like an actual puppet?
Yeah, well, my wife, I first started working with my wife first, Jody, and she started with the Teochew rod puppets. So it's like an iron rod, and then you manipulate the puppets, and the marionettes, they are here, and you have a stick and you control the
So there's a
marionettes like
lot
so.
of wow, there's a lot of sort of components happening at the same time.
Yeah.
So how would you describe the person who's manning the puppet as an actor?
Yeah, definitely.
So as an actor, you are more or less you are controlling the puppet, and then you're also voicing the puppet.
Yes, you're voicing it, and the controlling of the puppet, you're also, just like an actor, you also have to manage the people around you. You have to manage your co-actors, and you have to work with this space. The puppet has to, you time the movement. Anything goes wrong, you have to improvise. An audience laughs about something that maybe they shouldn't laugh at, or that something's mistimed, then you have to work with that. It's a very live craft, just like if you were acting in person on stage.
There's so many elements that go into that, which I didn't realize. How much training do you need in that, in being able to master the puppetry and then being able to like connect that to like actually the voice and being able to deliver that?
Yeah, I would say many puppeteers take about a couple of years to master a form, but I think it's a continuous journey of learning. I think, yeah, there are artists who just learn for decades and just continue to get better. I mean, the Japanese form, bunraku, I mean, it's something where the artist has done it for 3 years and then like, oh, finally I've stopped manipulating the feet. I might be manipulating a hand. And I met this 70-year-old guy one day. One day I will finally manipulate the head. and he's like been training for 20 years.
So it's like sort of like it's an extension of your body parts, and then I guess one day
Yeah.
you're able to maneuver a certain body part that you didn't know you were able to, because it's actually an extension when you're
Yeah. Well, it's a couple of things. I mean, sometimes the time it takes the time it takes because simply because it's a small group, it's a small troop, and the person in charge it's still in charge, and you're just waiting for him or her to move on. Sometimes maybe you got some parts really good, but the vocals, your singing is not quite there. Sometimes, so
this is a whole different artistry that I find that is slowly moving away from because of the new generation. And it's very important to know that this artistry is like it comes from a place, because in Thai they call it hun chet. Hun chet, basically it's before we had television, before we had this was a form of entertainment that people were able to tell their stories and able to kind of see things, see the world, see different things through this story, through puppetry. So
Thai puppeteers. We brought some Thai puppeteers here in Singapore about 10 years ago. Yeah, they're really, really, really good with the imagination and the shadow and everything. Kampong was one of the groups that came, and you could see a kind of something that we here in Singapore we didn't have. We needed to learn from them.
What was that exactly that you were learning from, like the Thai puppeteers? Yeah, I mean
there was just a way that they were so flexible with their space, very creative and innovative about how to tell a story. Yeah, whereas we see shadow puppets as something that's pretty flat and pretty straightforward, a pretty two-dimensional art form. One comes over the other, overlays the other, and characters are moving just like that.
Yeah.
But for the group that we saw, they were able to, how do you say, they literally use like film language, and they were like zooming in and zooming out.
Really?
And they were very inventive with seeing atmosphere and characters. A frog that opens up and you see the flies in his stomach and all that stuff. So they brought a lot of cinematic elements to it as well.
That's so. I mean, it's so interesting. You can have the base of the same sort of art, but then when you have cross-cultural sort of, then you learn from each other.
Yeah, that was the intention, because I mean, for me as an artist, when I was young, I always wanted to see more interesting stuff, more local work, more interesting things. So I thought this was a way that an artist could try and flesh out all their ideas, all their fantastic ideas, without having to spend $200,000 on the budget. Now, not necessarily, a couple of $1,000, rent a space, have some few ideas, grab a young audience, and maybe you can explore.
So with the NGO, basically you bring this over to different countries. Stories.
Well, they're already doing all that.
It's
already existing.
Okay.
I'm here to learn from the best. To, like, for example, thanks to working with this NGO, and there's going to be a big festival. There's going to be a big congress of different puppeteers around the world in Bali in April. And because I got to know them, I could introduce them, bring them over to Singapore for a bit.
Oh.
So some of them, I have a Dutch puppeteer, and he would be performing on a bicycle. So he's got a setup on it. So he puts himself as part of the performance. He's on a bicycle, and while he's cycling, and he's, "Hi, somebody stole my bicycle," and then he starts performing. And so I can't wait to see it. So he's on the way here. He's right now in India performing, and he'll come down to Singapore. And
so puppetry in Singapore, for people who may not be well versed or know that it exists, or they're new to it, how can they experience it?
Well, I mean, one of the places to go is, of course, traditional. Sometimes some traditional spaces. I would say, like, if there's a Chinese festivity going on, 7th month or whatever it is, you might see some string puppets or some.
That's where when I used to live in Singapore, that's where I was able to experience it. But I was wondering if there was, like, there was like a proper theater nowadays where people can, experience it. But I guess like those are like the more traditional
Yeah.
traditional platforms that you can see it. So let's talk about the extension of your creativity, because you have been embedded with creativity since you were little.
Yes.
And then doing theater, being a producer, and now you were sharing with me offline, off camera, that you didn't even know you knew how to draw.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean,
I didn't know I could paint.
oh, you
I
didn't-
mean, yeah, I always, just doodled a little bit, and I always tried, and then after, okay, I stopped, I gave up, I discovered theater, and that was good enough. That was fun to express myself. And then I was staying in Pulau Ubin for a while. I was taking a break, so I stayed on Pulau Ubin for about a week or so, and then I there was a taxi driver. There was an uncle, and he passed away. He was like he's older, an older gentleman. Lots of stories, very interesting. He didn't even speak English or Mandarin yet. He had this weird mix of languages that he was speaking.
And you were able to understand the mix of languages?
No, everyone was just trying to understand him anyway. They call him Uncle Bala because apparently he was a great supervisor. Pulau Ubin used to be a granite quarries. So he was one of those supervisors of the quarries back then. So his language is probably a mixture of Thai, Tamil,
Oh, wow.
everything like that, all mixed in. So, but yeah, then he was driving his van, these vans which serve as taxis on Pulau Ubin. And then there was one night I woke up, or one morning, and I heard that Uncle Bala was not well, and then we carried him to the speedboat, and to send him to the hospital back in Singapore, Changi Hospital, and later I found out he had passed on. So I just felt like I didn't do enough, and I think for once this was something where I couldn't express it any other way. I didn't really know his story very well. I knew he was a nice guy. Yeah, I'll tell you more about that later with time. But he was a really nice guy. But I didn't know enough about him to tell his story. So the night of the wake, the day of the wake, I just called my wife and said, hey, can you give me the painting, the paints that you got for me for my birthday, the pack of oil paints I haven't opened up yet, and I just want to do something for him. So I did his portrait based on a photograph, and so I did what I could. I went over to Tampines where the wake was done, and I touched up the painting, and I gave it to the family, and they were doing the wake, and it was really cute because they were still doing the rite of passage for him, and every once in a while they would be like, touch up that part, try painting, and then they're doing the ceremony. And he was like, this partner, make him smile a bit, and carry on, and then finally by the end of it, I had a painting that they liked, and they asked me to sign on it. And they said my father would really love it if you could put your name on this. So I did, and then I thought I really
honored.
Yeah, I did something for them and for myself, and my wife was there with me, and she felt good about it. And we're like, that's another art form that we should.
I'm smiling because it's a very feel good smiling because of the fact that it was such a good way to honor. And it's like when you're describing it, it's as if I can visualize myself being there watching a live performance, live performance being dedicated to him while his family was kind of noting.
No, that's great. That's great. Yeah. That's great. I hope more people remember people like this, people like actions like this. I think being there for a family. Yeah, I think that's the most humane thing we can do for each other in this very busy hustle bustle.
I think and even beyond family, with an example of yourself being not even in his immediate family, but being touched and just having met him, and being an extension of that to make the family feel complete at the wake. I'm just curious because you were saying that Uncle spoke so many different he had a mix of different languages. Was the rest of the family the same, or was it just Uncle himself?
It was just Uncle himself. Okay. It's a good question, but I mean, he was there for a long time on Pulau Ubin back then. So the family. I mean, Ubin folks are of course they want their families to move on to Singapore, have a good life, and go to university and be successful and all that. And then, yeah, it's a nice place where a lot of elderly also choose to go back to retire and spend the rest of their days in quiet and peace.
So from that experience with Uncle, was that what made you decide to stay on in Pulau?
Maybe. I mean, there were a few things that helped me. I mean, as I mentioned, I've been doing the arts and puppetry and everything for a while now. So one of the things that we discovered that was very useful for puppetry was for children education. But I think the activities that really tore me up a lot was when we started going to survivors of disaster. So we went to Tacloban in Philippines, where the huge super typhoon Yolanda, so where it demolished many homes and left many children alone and stranded. And so I thought, hey, let's go do something for them there. And then after that, people asked me if I wanted to do workshops in the hospitals as well. So there are things that I was doing for a good number of years dealing with trauma, and I think I took on a lot of the trauma myself. So I took on a lot of the pain myself, and so I think after a while, when you do this kind of work for disaster relief or for interculturalism, when you go to the temple of Angkor Wat, and when you hear a puppeteer telling me how he was hiding in the jungle from the soldiers, you come back to Singapore and it's like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Why are we missing out on all these things? I mean, where do I go to even talk to someone about this? So I went so my wife said, let's go to Pulau Ubin. And I did. And then you see these guys walking around bare feet, no slippers, jumping from a little fishing boat onto the beach and then up to have a beer or whatever it is. There is a Kampong-ness to it. Guys just chilling back, watching their dogs play and rough it out a little bit. Auntie with the chickens, or the temple, all of them off just being completely open to just engaging me, and nobody knows each other's names. We don't care about that, right? We don't care about,
it's like the human connection.
Yeah, just completely based on that. And I was like, yeah, this feels right, and it's not far away from Singapore. It's a place that we can go back and forth, and hopefully it will keep its charm. Hopefully it will not change too much. So I went back and forth a little bit more, and that's where I started settling in a bit more. Yeah.
The sort of irony is the fact that it's not so far, and you're like in a complete different space. And just to go back really quickly to people who might not know what Kampong is, I don't know if I'm describing it correctly, but it's like the basic community of villagers.
Yeah.
Is that how you would describe it?
Yeah, I would say so. And you see it around across Southeast Asia as well.
Yeah.
Like in Cambodia, you have a very similar word, Kampong also. So it's like, right.
In Thailand, you do too. In that, outside of Bangkok and provinces.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, so it's something unique to us, and I like it a lot.
Yeah, it's I think it's just the simplicity, and it's like I say this to a lot of my friends, is that a lot of times I think they're happier than people who live in the cities. It's because you mentioned earlier how people on the island, they strive to want to have a better life by going into the bigger city. But I think you can turn it the other way around. Whereas like when you live in this city and you are focused on things that aren't basic anymore, then you lose touch to what's basic. And then you look at these people and then you realize the simplicity actually makes them more whole and more happy. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, I think when you connect with nature a lot more, I think you feel a lot more at peace with yourself. Whereas someone who's always distracted by what's going on the cell phone, and always distracted by what's going on the screen so much, or bothered by somebody shoving you, or a small little accident on the bus, and you're so bothered by everything. It's like there's a lot more in life, a lot more simple in life to enjoy.
As we move and progress into, digital transformation, I think there's more distractions, more things on the surface, and it adds, and especially COVID, it adds into the pressure and everything. But you did bring up a point, how like with yourself having experienced like these disasters and people who have gone through it, it makes you realize, because I remember having a conversation with Ross, and she's had experience going to Syria, and it's been quite a shock for her to see these third world real problems and come back to the first world and go like, these are real problems.
Yeah.
It's like, and like what she shared with me is that it still weighs her down emotionally. And I think and I think that's what you were trying to say too. It's like, it weighs you down because when you come back and then it's like you're in your own environment, you realize that these stories, like the story that you told me about, like, Puppeteer in Cambodia, how like he was telling you his story and what he was going through, and then you realize so many people have gone through so much more.
Yes.
Yeah.
They have. And really makes you wonder why you want to burden yourself so much with this. And I think as a Singaporean, for me, it's really about giving back, and that's one way to lift the burden as well, where it's no longer a burden anymore, but this advantages you have, you turn it around and give it back and help them out and stuff. And that's kind of what I'm doing for Pulauubin too, because like it or not, they do need basic finances, they do need basic needs, and not everything can be achieved with just the land that they live on, medicine and all these things, and of course they do want a better life. So it's and at first they really were very angry with me when I put stuff on Facebook about stories about them.
How did that?
Well, now they are a bit better. Now they are like, oh, Terence, can you put my number on the if they need a taxi, please call me. Things like that. So it's like,
so for people who aren't familiar with Pulau, and they want to visit Pulau, it's like basically how far is it from the main?
Oh, not far at all. So like Pulauubin is like 15 minutes from Changi Village. Yeah, you go to the Changi ferry terminal at Changi Village. And then it's $4 to $8, for a boat ride over, and that's it. And
are there places that people can stay on Pulau, or basically it's like a day trip where you go and you visit the villages?
It's a day trip. I mean, if you want to stay overnight on Ubin, camping's the way to go. During COVID, of course, it was difficult to. I mean, at the peak of COVID, it was difficult to camp, but now I think the restrictions have been lifted, so you can camp overnight.
Because I think when people think about Singapore, because Singapore is like, a fast pace growing city, it's like all the beautiful skyline and everything, but then there's actually heritage. Yeah. And I think Pulau is one of the rare places that you can go and actually experience the heritage. Yeah. Because when I used to live here, which is quite some time ago, it's like there were still some kampongs that I could visit, but now they're even more rare. Yeah. So Pulau to this day is pretty much still intact.
To some extent. Yeah, they are getting older, and some of the residents have gone home to live with their family now in Singapore. So it is shrinking. It is fading away. But you can still capture the life there. There are younger people who move in and they want to stay on. Young 20-year-olds, 20-something-year-olds who do love their life, and hopefully they will take over the business. So
that's good. I do feel like we do have a mix of the younger generation. We have a mix of the younger generation who are very part of like this generation, the fast pace of the growing digital transformation, and then you have the other side where like you have a lot of the younger generation who wants to get back to the roots. Yeah. So it's always a balance. It's always a mix.
Yeah, it is.
Let's talk about your work. So from having done that piece to honor uncle and to now, how far have you gone as a painter?
Well, when I look back at that first piece, I'm like, I was so raw, so new, I just didn't know what I was doing. And then now I'm happy with my work. And of course, having been able to sell a couple of paintings, I also could buy better material and wasn't using the most basic amateur level paints. I'm using a higher grade paints now. Yeah, and I just keep learning on YouTube. It's a great resource, you know.
It is, definitely is.
Yeah, and books and everything. So I went to the library, I borrowed books, and then I went to hunt down some a great book on the former techniques of glazing and all these things. So all these different bits and pieces I just learned along the way. I also am I'm also one of the artist residents at this place called My Art Space. It's at Istana Park. So it's a studio that lets people come in and you can store your paintings there, which is great because everybody's like the problem with painting in Singapore is you got no place to ventilate, you got no place to leave your painting, you got kids or cats or whatever have you, right? And then like, oh shoot, where do I put the painting while I let it dry? So you need a studio that will
So
just
the studio
yeah
is a place where you can store your painting
yeah
when you need to. Okay.
yeah. So you sort of rent a space, rent a little garage for your paints and all that.
So
So
you can just fairly be a non-painter, no experience whatsoever to go to the space.
yeah, of course.
Okay.
Of course, they accept all. I mean, we all start from,
I think that's the intimidation that some people might have, like when they go, well, I can't do that, but then you have to. It's okay to start from a place.
Yes. I think for me I think if not for Uncle Bala, if not for Pulauubin, maybe I wouldn't even have tried. Maybe there wasn't something that pushed me so hard to let go of my inhibitions and worry about whether it's going to look good or not. I just went straight for it.
I'm laughing because I stumbled on like I used to live in a Kampong and they had this shop where you can just get a canvas and everything, and they would have samples of like Van Gogh and stuff. I'm like, well, I just want to kind of go with the flow. So I go with the flow, and it's like, and I think this is not a good thing to do, but the I guess like the person who was like giving me tips, she asked if why was I drawing puffs, but I was just going abstract. Yeah, but I think you just kind of have to go with it. Otherwise, you won't learn.
Yeah.
And then you have to be okay with whatever you're going to create to go to the next level.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we're gonna show your work.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to end this conversation and do a separate one where we
Okay.
describe your work. Thank you so much, Terence.
You're welcome.
Learned so much today.
Thanks.